It's honestly hard to believe what just went down in Congress. In a stunning bipartisan move that blindsided Trump's inner circle, the House just passed legislation permanently barring him from receiving federal contracts, subsidies, or government business of any kind. We're talking about a complete financial firewall between Trump and taxpayer dollars. And here's the kicker. This wasn't just Democrats celebrating. 12 Republicans crossed party lines to make this happen, and Warren Buffett, who's stayed largely silent on Trump for years, just released a statement calling it the most fiscally responsible vote Congress has taken in a decade. This isn't just about one businessman losing government deals. We're talking about setting a precedent that could reshape how former presidents interact with federal funding forever, and the implications are absolutely staggering. Let me fill you in on what's been happening behind closed doors. So, Donald Trump has been navigating a pretty complex relationship with federal contracts since leaving office in January 2021. Throughout his presidency, his businesses maintained numerous connections to government spending, despite the emoluments clause controversy that plagued his entire term. Whether it was Secret Service agents staying at Trump properties, foreign dignitaries booking rooms at his hotels, or various federal agencies leasing space in Trump buildings, the lines between his private business interests and public office were constantly blurred. After leaving the White House, Trump assumed he could continue pursuing federal contracts through his various business entities. His organization started bidding on everything from real estate development projects on federal land to contracts for services at government facilities. But here's where the rubber meets the road. We're now 34 months into Trump's post-presidency, and the financial entanglements have only grown more complex. Congressional oversight committees have been reviewing thousands of pages of financial documents showing the full extent of Trump's attempts to secure federal money. Ethics watchdog groups are sounding alarms. Former government contracting officials are coming forward with concerns about preferential treatment. And Trump himself has been publicly complaining that he's being unfairly targeted when other former officials face no such restrictions. The pressure has been building for months. Democrats have been pushing for comprehensive legislation that would close what they call the Trump loophole, while Republicans were split between those defending free market principles and those worried about the optics of a former president enriching himself through government contracts. Reports from around October 23rd revealed just how frustrated congressional leaders had become with the situation. Representative Jamie Raskin, serving on the House Oversight Committee, labeled Trump's pursuit of federal contracts as a constitutional crisis waiting to happen, and even went as far as to say that allowing it to continue would make a mockery of our anti-corruption frameworks. Talk about strong words. Essentially, Raskin was calling Trump a threat to ethical governance for not understanding that former presidents should maintain distance from government money. And this wasn't a private committee discussion. Raskin made sure to air these concerns publicly during televised hearings, making it clear that he was not happy with the status quo continuing. This announcement sent shockwaves through Washington because it raised all sorts of questions. If congressional Democrats working with ethics-minded Republicans could build enough momentum for permanent restrictions, what did that mean for Trump's business empire and future political ambitions? Now, this isn't the first time we've seen Trump's financial dealings create problems for his political allies. Trump's approach to personal enrichment really only respects one principle, his own bottom line. Whenever someone tries to impose restrictions or ethical guidelines, he's quick to attack them as politically motivated persecution. We've spotted this pattern time and time again. Just think about how he turned on Jeff Sessions right after Sessions recused himself from the Russia investigation in March 2017. Sessions, one of Trump's earliest and most loyal supporters, followed Justice Department ethics guidelines and stepped aside from overseeing the probe due to his campaign involvement. Trump was furious, publicly humiliating Sessions for months, calling him weak and disloyal, eventually forcing him out in November 2018. The message was clear: loyalty to Trump personally mattered more than following institutional rules. Then there was William Barr. Trump's second attorney general seemed like the perfect ally, defending the president on multiple fronts and even releasing a summary of the Mueller report that favored Trump's narrative. But when Barr stated in December 2020 that the Justice Department found no evidence of widespread election fraud that would change the outcome, Trump turned on him instantly. Barr wasn't pleased when Trump kept pushing debunked conspiracy theories, and within weeks he resigned under pressure. Their relationship collapsed because Barr wouldn't cross certain legal and factual lines, even for Trump. And let's not forget how he distanced himself from Mike Pence when Pence refused to illegally overturn the 2020 election results on January 6th. Trump spent weeks pressuring his vice president to reject electoral votes from key states, something Pence had no constitutional authority to do. When Pence followed his constitutional duty instead of Trump's demands, Trump effectively threw him to the wolves. The mob that stormed the Capitol was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and Trump did nothing to defend him for hours. Their political partnership, built over 4 years, meant nothing the moment Pence chose constitutional obligation over personal loyalty. Even Kevin McCarthy faced a similar fate when McCarthy started cooperating with the January 6th committee investigation in early 2023. McCarthy had initially blamed Trump for the Capitol attack before walking back his comments and attempting to rebuild the relationship. But Trump never fully trusted him again, and when McCarthy lost the speakership in October 2023, Trump offered no support, essentially abandoning his former ally when he needed help most. This pattern is becoming all too familiar. You can show all the loyalty in the world and defend Trump every single day, but the moment you step out of line or cease to be useful because you're following the law or institutional norms, he'll toss you aside without a second thought. So, what did congressional Republicans do to prompt this legislation? Well, it all boils down to growing discomfort with Trump's aggressive pursuit of federal money while simultaneously planning another presidential run. The tension built because Republicans were trying to defend Trump on multiple legal fronts: the classified documents case, the January 6th prosecution, the Georgia election interference charges, while simultaneously watching him bid on lucrative federal contracts that would directly benefit him financially. Ultimately, several moderate Republicans reached a breaking point. They couldn't keep defending the principle that Trump was being unfairly persecuted while he was actively trying to profit from taxpayer funds. As the pressure mounted from constituents and ethics groups, a handful of House Republicans decided to take a pragmatic stance. They worked quietly with Democratic leadership to craft legislation that would apply to all former presidents, not just Trump, making it appear less like a targeted attack and more like a systemic reform. Their approach seemed to be establish clear rules for everyone going forward, close the loopholes, and move past this distraction. At first, Republican leadership seemed reluctant but not entirely opposed to the idea. After all, they appreciate clear ethical boundaries in principle, and many were exhausted from constantly defending Trump's business dealings. But here's where things started to go wrong. As the legislation gained momentum through October and early November, the political implications became clearer. Trump himself began attacking the proposal ferociously on Truth Social, calling it the greatest witch hunt in American history and demanding that every Republican vote against it. Conservative media outlets picked up his messaging, framing the legislation as a partisan attack designed to destroy Trump financially and prevent his political comeback. Fox News ran segments questioning whether Congress had the authority to impose such restrictions. Talk radio hosts called it unconstitutional overreach. The pressure on Republicans to oppose the bill intensified dramatically. This was the moment Trump began to sweat a little. You see, Trump values his business empire, his public image as a successful businessman, and overall his ability to monetize his political brand. He doesn't want to be tied to legislation that explicitly bars him from government contracts, cutting off what could be hundreds of millions in potential revenue. That's definitely not the outcome he seeks. And then Republican leadership went ahead and made a move that, according to Trump, was a serious betrayal. Several influential Republicans started signaling they might support the legislation, or at least wouldn't whip votes against it. They figured they should let members vote their conscience on an ethics matter. They even considered that passing comprehensive reform might actually help Republicans politically by demonstrating they take corruption seriously. But then, when Trump caught wind of all this, he absolutely lost it. In Trump's eyes, Republicans even considering this legislation is just a sign of weakness and disloyalty. Allowing a vote that could pass, that's pure betrayal. Any Republican who dares to support restrictions on Trump's business dealings is instantly labeled a Reno Republican in name only and targeted for primary challenges. Now this left moderate Republicans in a tight spot. On one side, they really need to maintain credibility with voters in competitive districts who care about ethics and government reform. The suburban voters who flipped many districts in 2018 and 2022 will drop Republican representatives like a hot potato if they appear to be enabling corruption just to protect Trump. On the flip side, they actually have to navigate Republican primaries, where Trump's endorsement can make or break campaigns. That means figuring out how to balance constituent demands for ethical governance with Trump's demand for absolute loyalty and keeping the MAGA base energized. The tricky part is all of that requires some level of independence from Trump and willingness to occasionally vote against his interests when ethics demand it. So these Republicans are caught in a bind. They can either keep trying to please Trump, which means opposing popular ethics reforms and appearing to enable his self-dealing, and that only makes them look corrupt and paints Republicans in a bad light heading into 2024. Or they can do their actual job as representatives of their constituents, which means supporting reasonable restrictions on former presidents profiting from government contracts. But that'll definitely make Trump turn against them, probably costing them their seats in primaries. It's a tough situation, and that's the mess Trump creates for Republican leaders. He demands complete loyalty and wants them to block any legislation that affects him personally without budging, but then he points fingers when Republicans look corrupt or lose general elections. He's not shy about tossing them under the bus whenever it suits him. This whole scenario is causing major stress within the Republican caucus. If Trump is willing to attack Republicans who support basic ethics legislation, and if he's going to publicly undermine his own party members over this issue, every House Republican is left wondering if they're the next target. Those moderates who are trying to balance conservative principles with ethical governance are now worried sick about being the next one to face Trump's wrath and a primary challenger. Meanwhile, the Trump loyalists believe these 12 Republicans who voted for the legislation aren't loyal enough and that they're too open to compromise with Democrats on issues that directly affect Trump. Things became even more intense when Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of Trump's most vocal defenders in Congress, broke away from the 12 Republicans who voted for the bill. She had been pushing for complete opposition to any restrictions whatsoever and criticized the Republican supporters for stabbing President Trump in the back while he's fighting multiple witch hunts. When someone as aligned with Trump as Greene starts attacking fellow Republicans, you know the party fracture is serious. The House Oversight Committee decided to hold hearings before the vote. On November 8th, Chairman James Comer convened proceedings where ethics experts, former government lawyers, and constitutional scholars testified about the appropriateness of restricting former presidents from federal contracts. The testimony was remarkably one-sided. Legal expert Norm Eisen, who served as ethics czar in the Obama administration but whose credentials span decades of bipartisan work, stated that allowing former presidents to compete for federal contracts creates insurmountable conflicts of interest that undermine public trust in government. He pointed out that the constitutional framers anticipated exactly this problem, which is why they included emoluments protections in the first place. The hearing revealed that Trump's businesses had submitted bids for over 40 different federal contracts since January 2021, totaling potential revenue exceeding $800 million. That's not just seeking occasional business opportunities. That's a systematic effort to profit from government spending. The legal process moved pretty quickly, and the final vote was scheduled for November 15th. After all, every day the situation remained unresolved meant more controversy, more ethics complaints, and more political damage to Republicans trying to defend the indefensible. And let me tell you, the vote outcome didn't hold back. It was a major blow for Trump. The final tally was 232-203, with 12 Republicans joining all Democrats to pass the Federal Contracts Ethics Reform Act. That's legal speak for saying you've got no solid ground to stand on here. There's no legal validity to claiming you should access taxpayer money while running for president. This is a clear conflict of interest. Legal experts are noting that we haven't seen Congress impose financial restrictions on a former president like this since the post-Watergate reforms of the 1970s. Richard Painter, who served as chief White House ethics lawyer under George W. Bush, went on MSNBC and made a statement that really should catch everyone's attention. He said that this legislation is long overdue and Trump's legal team will find it nearly impossible to challenge successfully because Congress has broad authority to set conditions for federal contracting. Just think about that for a moment. This assessment comes from someone who served a Republican president, and this is coming from a conservative voice on government ethics. Noah Bookbinder, president of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, mentioned that when a former president actively seeks federal money while planning another campaign, we've entered unprecedented ethical territory that demands legislative action. When legal experts from both sides start tossing around terms like unprecedented conflicts and insurmountable ethics problems, that's the moment to really pay attention. Then came Warren Buffett's statement, which dropped like a bombshell just hours after the vote. Buffett, who famously avoids weighing in on most political controversies, released a carefully worded statement through Berkshire Hathaway. He wrote, "In 50 years of government contracting experience through our various businesses, we have never seen a situation where a former president sought federal contracts while planning to run for office again." Congress's decision to establish clear boundaries is the most fiscally responsible vote they've taken in a decade. Taxpayers deserve assurance that government contracts go to the most qualified bidders, not to politically connected individuals who might leverage those contracts for campaign purposes. Coming from America's most respected investor, this statement carried enormous weight and gave political cover to the Republicans who voted yes. So let's break down what this legislation could mean, because it's not just a captivating political story. It has serious consequences for how our government operates and how former presidents conduct themselves after leaving office. First up is the immediate political fallout. Trump is already facing significant financial pressure due to his mounting legal bills across multiple cases, and his business empire has struggled since leaving office. According to Forbes, Trump's net worth has declined by an estimated $1 billion since 2020, partly due to reduced property values and partly due to legal settlements and judgments. The Federal Contracts Ethics Reform Act means cutting off a potential revenue stream he was counting on. And honestly, that's not the best look for him heading into the 2024 campaign. He's built his entire brand on being a successful businessman, and now Congress has essentially declared he cannot be trusted with government contracts. Most folks in America have a good deal of respect for congressional oversight of taxpayer spending as a vital part of our system, even if they don't always agree with specific decisions. Democrats are definitely planning to take advantage of this situation. They'll argue that Trump believes he's above ethical standards and does not hold the Constitution's anti-corruption provisions in high regard, and they'll have this congressional vote and Buffett's statement backing up those claims. This is going to be Exhibit A in proving that Trump views the presidency as a business opportunity rather than public service. You can expect to see clips of the vote and quotes from Republican supporters popping up in Democratic campaign ads, speeches, and debates throughout 2024. Now let's touch on what this means for the institution of the presidency itself. Presidential ethics norms have been working hard to keep former presidents out of direct financial dealings with the current government, wanting the office to be viewed as above financial self-interest. But by aggressively pursuing federal contracts while planning another campaign, Trump's waded right into a controversy that demanded legislative intervention. Trump and his supporters are now poised to attack Congress, claiming partisan bias and questioning their motives, which complicates the relationship between former presidents and the legislative branch. Yet, Congress probably felt they had no other choice. If they stayed silent while Trump systematically sought government money, the presidency's credibility as an office of public service would take an even bigger hit. This situation shines a massive spotlight on whether former presidents should face any restrictions on their business activities. At the heart of the issue is whether Trump can just bid on government contracts whenever he feels like it, while simultaneously running for president again. If he gets his way on that through legal challenges to this new law, it could totally change how ex-presidents operate. The office of the presidency was designed with certain dignity and distance from commerce built in. The framers worried about leaders using public office for private gain, which is exactly why they included emoluments protections in the Constitution. Those protections were meant to ensure that presidents served the public interest, not their financial interests. But Trump has always been uncomfortable with those limitations. He craves total control over his business empire and maximum revenue opportunities. If this legislation gets overturned in court, that's a significant boost to presidential immunity from ethics rules, and it opens the door for future presidents to misuse the office for personal profit even more brazenly. So, the implications of this case reach far beyond just Trump and federal contracts. It's about shaping the structure of presidential ethics for many years to come. Each time Trump brushes aside norms, breaks precedents, or attacks institutions that try to check his behavior, it weakens our democratic systems. It starts making behavior that used to be completely unacceptable feel normal and routine. Think about it. If Trump can aggressively pursue hundreds of millions in government contracts while running for president, what's to stop the next president from doing the same thing even more systematically? If he can just ignore conflicts of interest whenever he wants because he claims persecution, what's to prevent another leader from following that lead and doing it even more brazenly? These actions don't just disappear when Trump leaves the political stage. They become part of our new reality, our new baseline for what's considered acceptable presidential behavior. And that's pretty dangerous. Democracy relies on those norms and institutions, assuming that people in power will play by the rules and maintain ethical boundaries, even when it's a bit inconvenient or costs them money. When those norms crumble, when ethics become optional, democracy itself starts to falter. Looking ahead to the 2024 election, it's clear that all of this is going to have some significant effects. We're still 12 months out from those elections, but the narrative being set now is bound to influence how things go. If the story playing out is one of Trump battling Congress over his right to profit from taxpayer money and being rejected by a bipartisan coalition that includes 12 members of his own party, that spells trouble for his general election chances. Voters usually don't reward candidates who appear to be using politics for personal enrichment. They want leaders focused on their problems and their communities, not on lining their own pockets. Right now, Trump isn't offering that reassurance, so expect Democrats to champion a message focused on returning to ethical norms and presidential dignity. After years of chaos and conflict of interest controversies under Trump, there are folks who believe that if you vote for Biden or another Democrat, government will actually work for regular people again instead of enriching the powerful. They're promising no more constant ethics scandals or fights over whether the president should profit from his office, just good old normal governance focused on the issues that matter to working families. That message might just hit home for a lot of voters, including some Republicans and independents who are exhausted by the corruption controversies. So, here's the deal. Congress just voted to permanently bar Trump from federal contracts. 12 Republicans broke ranks to make it happen, and Warren Buffett called it the most fiscally responsible vote in a decade. This isn't just about one businessman losing potential deals. It's about whether we genuinely believe former presidents should maintain ethical distance from taxpayer money, or if we're going to allow them to systematically profit from government while seeking office again. If the courts overturn this legislation and Trump successfully challenges these restrictions, then we're basically saying conflicts of interest don't matter anymore for former presidents. That would mean we're stepping into a completely new realm where the presidency becomes just another business opportunity, where ethical boundaries are mere suggestions, and where public service is secondary to personal profit. It's about so much more than just federal contracts. It's about whether we genuinely have a system where presidents serve the people, or if we're just stuck with whoever can most effectively monetize their political power for personal gain. So keep an eye on this. Things are just heating up. Trump's legal team has already announced they're reviewing options to challenge the legislation in federal court. The next few weeks are going to be crucial as we learn whether this ban will actually stick or get tied up in litigation for years. We're just getting started. The stakes have never been higher, the constitutional principles more fundamental, and the outcome more unpredictable. This is a defining moment for presidential ethics, and how it resolves will shape the office for generations to come.